So far away, Brad, what is the longest you've ever held it all in?
Oh. I usually plan around. I can't think of an incident where I've had to hold it in for too long.
I've had that.
Sounds like you've got a story.
Yeah, I was in a car journey recently where I had to hold it in for like, it was only an hour, but we were in like the middle of India in the countryside, and our driver's like, there's no toilets.
Which way to the bathroom?
Oh, it's 23rd door in the left.
Astronauts are bloody heroes, and I don't really think there's any other descriptor you can use to describe men who willingly allow themselves to be strapped to $1 billion worth of bleeding edge technology built by the lowest bidder that is then like sent screaming into lower orbit. Yeah, so that's it. I won't do it. Would you, Brad?
I'd only do it if like you know everyone's like, oh, if you're terminal you'll do anything. I'll do that, but no, I'm too afraid of dying.
It's that great quote, isn't it? Like, I forget which astronaut it was who said it, but it's like, what did you think when you were sat in the rocket ship while you went to space? You know, I just sat there and thought to myself, everything I'm sat on was built by the lowest bidder.
It's a terrifying thought.
Yep. Not the best thing to think of, really, is it? But, you know, moving on with my intro, it's not that space is without its downsides. Like, just ask Alan Shepard, a man whose historic first flight to space was marred by the fact he smelled like piss the entire time.
Ugh.
So this is one of those times where we get to do something I love about Fact Fiend videos, where we talk about something that's very important from history, but we get to talk about a lesser known aspect of it that's very silly. In this case, the fact that an astronaut smelled like wee. And while this is a very funny topic, because yeah, the astronaut weed himself, as we're going to get to, the issue of pissing in space is one that is incredibly serious. And do you happen to know anything about like the arms race of sorts that happened to figure out how astronauts could go in space?
I don't know specifically, but I know about other aspects of the development of that kind of technology. So I understand that, I mean, obviously you've got to remove a liquid from like a technologically dense environment in a way that doesn't damage anything.
Homer, no! Huh? They'll clog the instruments!
Careful, they're ruffled.
And also, you've got to do it in zero gravity. And
yep.
For the curious who think we've just got very dirty minds or we've been very childish here, how you go in space is notably the singular most popular question astronauts get asked when they meet members of the public.
By far, the most common question we get asked as astronauts is, how do you go to the bathroom in space?
The thing is, though, it's interesting, isn't it? Because everybody poops. Everybody's got to do it. But in space, it's very difficult. For anyone curious, the answer is carefully and with the aid of suction. Because have you ever seen those space toilets that are basically like, you stick your arse in it, it suctions around your arse and it sucks out everything as it goes.
It just sounds like it's going to pull your organs out, doesn't it?
And it's in that situation where you've got to trust the person who built it. And that's why, you know, astronauts have a tremendous amount of trust in the people who built the things that they rely on for, you know, their life. And is it Chris Hadfield? He's like the famous astronaut who does all like the Q&As and stuff.
Yeah, I think so. He's the one we talked about him when he played Bowie's song. Was it Spaceman? Or which song was it?
There's a great interview with him where he talks about how going to the toilet in space is very strange because you're in zero gravity. So you think like when you're stood here, like you pee, it all pools on the bottom of your bladder. In space, that's not exactly the case. So it's actually very difficult to know when you need to go in space because the pressure that naturally exists on Earth due to the force of gravity on your bladder does not exist. So something astronauts have to teach themselves to do is go whether they need it, quote unquote, or not. Because like you can like fill your bladder with liquid to the point where it's dangerous without realizing you need to go.
It's weird to think about how much gravity plays into bodily functions because we never have to think
Isn't
about
that interesting? And according to him, like yeah, you have to be taught to go to the bathroom again in space. And one of the first things he did when he went for a pee in space, he did it upside down. Because why not? Wouldn't you? Like I'm saying, you got the opportunity. Why would you not piss upside down? Because fuck it.
But then if you're in zero gravity, well, I mean, there's no such thing technically as zero gravity.
Yeah.
But
some smart ass going to say that.
Yeah. But if you're in that situation, then what is upside down? Like, are you upside down, or are you just a different way up?
You know, and it's this whole deal to figure out how to do this. And there's like, you know, a couple of amusing stories from the history of teaching astronauts to piss, or, you know, just handling other astronaut bodily functions. For example, for many years, they struggled to get astronauts to get catheters that fit. Because when they asked the astronaut, so what size catheter do you need, like, you know, over your ding dong? They would always say large. Even if they didn't happen to need a large, and that would cause issues because then it's not a snug fit. If it's not a snug fit, piss goes everywhere, especially in zero gravity. So what the eggheads at NASA did is they changed the sizing from small, medium, large to, I think, large, gigantic, and humongous.
But then they're always going to say humongous.
Exactly, but then they realised if we just call it that, then no one's going to say small, even if they need a small. And it doesn't matter how much, like, you know, the tech guys told them, look, it's really important. We don't care how big it is, we just need you to be safe. They'd always say large, and it always ran into issues. So considering a bodily function from the same area that's altogether different is the astronaut Sally Field. Did you ever hear what happened to her when she went to space?
I'd know.
Well, female astronaut, she's going to space. You know, it might be that time of the month. And I think this showcases how overwhelmingly male NASA was at the time. I'm not sure what the exact demographics are now, but when Sally Fields was about to go into space, she got approached by a sheepish engineer. It's like, oh, you're going to need some tampons, right? She's like, I guess, depending on when I go. And they asked her, seriously, would 100 be enough? And she was there like, do you know anything about women?
How long was she going for?
A week.
A week?
Yeah, she was going for a week and they asked if 100 tampons would be enough. And my favourite thing about that story is when you tell people, you always get at least one guy who goes, is it?
For instance, the bathroom facilities.
Bathroom facilities.
How much did you get asked then?
Just about every interview I got asked that. Everybody wanted to know about what kind of makeup I was taking up. They didn't care about how well prepared I was to operate the arm or deploy communication satellites.
That's the thing, and that's something they have to take into account because, you know, we need to take, if you need them, they need to be on the ship, and if they're on the ship, like, you know, their weight and the amount of space they take up needs to be accounted for, as does, like, you know, things like disposal and comfort for you, the astronaut. And it's one of the things about space travel that is not as often discussed, but I find absolutely fascinating, about how do you figure these problems out. And we've talked in the past about food that astronauts eat, which realistically, for anything but, like, you know, those long haul flights you're there for hundreds and hundreds of days, they could just feed the astronauts just nutrient paste.
Yeah.
Like, you know, they could just give them protein shakes and pills and supplements and they'd be fine. But, like, just for morale, what NASA and other space agencies do is they ask astronauts what their favourite food is and then try and create a space, like, you know, safe version of that. And what the eggheads at NASA do is they consider that to be a challenge because while, yeah, like, I think one astronaut asked for ice cream once, and it's like they had to figure out how to freeze dry ice cream. And while that sounds a bit, like, you know, superfluous, why are you wasting money on that? The breakthroughs that they can make figuring that shit out can have other applications for, like, you know, other aspects of you know, living here on Earth.
Yeah.
Because, like, they're figuring out countless ways to, like, you know, minimize storage, for example, or figure out how to make food last longer, or food last longer and still taste good.
Food that goes into space needs to be compact, easy to prepare, nutritious, and it needs to taste good because no one wants to eat crappy food in space.
What's on the menu tonight?
Strawberry shortcake.
And you never know when something like, you know, to keep ice cream cold might come into play with taking other things like samples or, yeah.
You hit the nail on the head there where there might be countless other applications for the stuff they figure out while doing this. But in specific regards to figuring out how to go in space, that wasn't really an issue for the first couple of years of a space race because, like, to put it simply, none of the missions into space lasted long enough for it to be a problem.
Would they just force themselves to go before they went?
Yeah, and astronauts who didn't were just told to hold it in. Because you'd only be in space for about an hour anyway at most, and if you can't hold it in for an hour, what are you doing being a spaceman?
I mean, I'd be worried that the changes in the atmosphere and like gravity and stuff, I'd be worried that it would affect your ability to hold it. Like, I know you've said that they don't know when they need to go, but what if it affected their ability to actually hold it in?
Well, do you know the answer there is, Brad? You hold it in. And there are examples of astronauts holding it in for several days.
Oh.
Like when they've been stuck in space without the ability to use their
But
toilet.
when I was a kid, I was told if you did that, you would pop.
Well, yeah, but fuck it, you're an astronaut. And generally, astronauts are like the absolute best of the best of the best. Like, they are like the pinnacle of, like, you know, what humans can achieve in terms of, like, mind and body. Like, they are the absolute creme de la creme of you know, humanity there. So if anyone can hold it in, it's those guys. But yeah, it wasn't really an issue for the first couple of years of the space race. But nowadays it is. And for anyone curious, because, you know, I looked it up, you can 100% piss in a modern spacesuit thanks to the existence of something called the maximum absorbency garment. And
that sounds like a fancy name for a nappy or a diaper.
it's exactly that, yes. It's a space diaper. And NASA doesn't like them being called space diapers because space diaper really does not do this thing justice. So the maximum absorbency garment is like a pair of underwear, but it is the most high-tech, space-age, literally space-age underwear you'll ever see. And the material in it is quite literally space-age, and it can absorb up to 400 times its own weight in liquid before it even starts to feel damp.
And an astronaut cannot simply go back inside to use the bathroom. But the problem is solved by the maximum absorbency garment.
Very fancy word for an adult diaper.
It's so like, yesterday I threw out a pair of my boxers because there was a massive hole in the crotch, and now we're talking about super high-tech pants.
And they cost tens of thousands of dollars. And that's the thing, like, you can wear these things and you can put like several litres of liquid into them before they start to feel like damp at all.
Several litres of liquid?
Mm-hmm.
So how many times can you piss yourself? Like, many?
Quite a few. That's the thing, you can piss yourself like 15 times in these things before they even start to feel damp.
I want a pair. I'd never have to stop working.
Well, that's the thing, there's like so many things that like NASA and the military has that we, you know, peons aren't allowed access to. Like, did you know like the military has access to silent Velcro? That's a thing. Silent Velcro exists, and it's just not ever been made available for public use because once it was invented, they immediately just classified its existence and only use it on military stuff. Because think, well, why would silent Velcro be a big deal? Imagine you're a special forces operative at night, sneaking through the jungle. You want to take off, like, you know, because a lot of that stuff is like Velcroed on for quick access and removal.
God, it'll be so awkward if you were on a stealth mission. just
exactly, yeah. And that's it sounds stupid until you think about like the very specific case study of that. It's like, well, when you're in the military or something like NASA, like, yeah, as far-fetched as that sounds, they're the people who have to prepare for the most ridiculous scenario possible. That's their job for the most part, is, you know, preparing for the unpreparable. And in a similar vein to, like, you know, the maximum absorbency garment, there is also like super underwear worn by the army that doesn't need to be changed for 6 months. Have you heard about this?
No!
So the army has access to special underwear that is lined with, I think, like microscopic silver particles and a bunch of other stuff, which basically means they clean themselves and the wearer's nether regions, and they can be worn and they can stay fresh for up to 6 months.
Stop talking about all this stuff I can't have.
So they can be like worn on patrol in, like, say, a hot foreign country for months on end before they start to smell. Because again, you know, that's an issue that's going to happen when you're a soldier walking around a war zone. You can't change your underwear, like, you know, once a day. So that's what the solution is. Like, you know, you've got underwear that doesn't need to be changed for, you know, at least a couple of months.
Yeah, but do we yet have the jacket that Marty McFly has, where you pull a string and it dries itself?
Well, the thing is, someone out there probably fucking does. Like, you don't even need to have a jacket that dries itself. You've got a jacket that's, like, you know, like hydrophobic. Have you seen that material?
Oh, I have.
Like,
I've seen it.
hydrophobic material that just, like, water bounces
like
straight
magic.
off it. Yeah, they probably have access to that. We don't. That's it. We probably don't know the extent of the shit the military and NASA has access to. It's probably classified. But let's bring it back to Alan Shepard smelling like piss.
It feels so mean. Like,
It does feel mean, but, you know, it's a historic moment in the space race because, like, he's the first person to need to go in space. And as I mentioned, early missions didn't really need to plan for this because they'd only be in space for a couple of hours at most. And Alan Shepard's case was going to be very similar, but he ended up getting stuck on the launch pad for a bladder detonating 8 hours.
Oh, so he just sat there, like, because obviously he's strapped in, right?
Yeah, he's strapped into the rocket, and it's not like you can get out and go for a piss.
If I was him, if I was him trapped on the launch pad for 8 hours, and then they're like, right, we're ready to take off, I'd be like, fuck that.
You can't though, because just think like every second of delay is hundreds of thousands of dollars being wasted. And because he was under the assumption that he'd only be in space for like an hour, and the mission would take like a grand total a couple hours, he spent his morning doing nothing but drink coffee and orange juice. Which is literally a Simpsons bit where Homer needs the bathroom and is like, man, I really wish I hadn't drank all that beer and watermelon.
Man, I really have to go to the bathroom. Why did I have all that beer and coffee and watermelon?
Yeah, he needed to go. So it's noted that when the mission was about to start, Alan Shepard just radio command and said, man, I gotta pee. And Brad, what do you think happened when Shepard told command that he needed to go for a piss.
I'm guessing the words that came back were, hold it.
It was at first yes, which he responded, I can't, which caused, and I'm going to paraphrase here, a panic at Capsule Command, because they didn't know whether or not it was possible for him to go in his suit. It's like, keep in mind all like the crazy technology that's in that suit, including life support systems.
Wait,
and they
so
couldn't drag him out without delaying the entire mission, which would cost them hundreds of thousands of dollars.
So there was a genuine concern that he might kill himself by pissing himself?
Yes. And they had all of their tech guys behind the scenes trying to figure out what to do. Because, like, you know, they were moments away from launch. It's like, I gotta go. Well, we can't delay the mission anymore. You've got to go into space. Like, but I need to pee. Can I pee in my suit? And they're like, well, we don't know. It's full of life support systems. So what they eventually did is they turned off every extraneous system that wasn't directly tied to keeping him alive and told him, just go. And even then, they told him that it probably, quote unquote, wouldn't kill him when he did it. Which means that Alan Shepard probably had the most tense piss in the history of the world.
Diapers anytime, son.
Suit thermometer says freon flow, jumping from 30 to 45.
Left lower chest sensor.
You'd think at that point, you maybe could hold it. Like, if someone said to you, if you don't hold this, you might die.
Brad,
you think
he's
he's
holding it for 8 hours. 8 hours. 8 fucking hours.
I mean, in that case, did he? Where was he when he did it? Like, was he on the ground, or was it once they'd taken off?
He was in the pod.
But
he was about to go into space.
Okay, so he wasn't actually in space by that point. Because if I was him, I'd have brought this up before it took off, so that even if something went wrong, you could still take your helmet off and breathe.
Yeah, but no, they couldn't do that. Brad, they strapped them into him in those days. Like back in those days, they strapped them into it. He was locked in. That was it. He was like, you know, there was no going back. So he went in the suit. They took his readings. They noticed that nothing went wrong, nothing got damaged. They turned his all the other systems back on, and sent him to space in an airtight suit that stunk of piss.
Lovely.
What a fucking hero.
Human history.
It is. That's the thing. First guy to do it.
Yep.
Like Neil Armstrong might be able to say he was the first man on the moon, but he wasn't the first person to piss himself in space. That was Alan Shepard.
You know, he said they were trying desperately to figure out how to deal with the issue. I'm picturing that scene from Apollo 13 where they have to manufacture something to get like a square device into a circular socket, and all of the technicians are there with this big bag of stuff, but instead they're all just there with a bucket of piss. Like, how do we do this? How do we do this?
That probably was what happened behind the scenes. Like they had to get everyone in who was experts on that suit. Because that's the thing, like water is one thing, so they anticipate sweat, for example. But sweat has a very different chemical makeup to urine.
Yeah.
And it might sound stupid, but you know, this is equipment that is so meticulously engineered. Any deviation from what it's expected to do could cause a catastrophic failure and kill everybody on board. So they had to plan for this, and it's they were fine. And they used the data that they got from that. So okay, spacesuits are a bit better designed than we thought they were. It's like all that footage of people falling down on the moon. You ever seen that?
Yeah, I've seen it.
Like all the footage of men falling down on the moon. And they are considered historic moments because they weren't sure if an astronaut who fell over could get back up. Because that was the thing, well, we don't know how we're going to maneuver in gravity like that. If you fall over, you might die. Yeah. So think about that when they're walking on the moon. Not only is it if something goes wrong, there's no one to help you, but if you fall over, if you deck it and eat shit, you might die.
Those early space missions, a lot of it was just, we're not quite sure, we'll just see. If you look at the ships they used to fly up in, some parts were incredibly flimsy, and it was just because they'd done the calculations and knew that it probably wouldn't break.
If anything goes wrong. And that's the thing, those guys fucking hit. That's why I said, absolute balls on them to do that. When I say the tensest piss that any human has ever done, I'm not kidding. He was just told straight up, you might die. It cost too much money to bring you out to go to the bathroom. Also, as well, that'd be real embarrassing. And I don't know what's more embarrassing, that they stopping a space. Because that's the thing, if they'd have dropped out, they'd probably put another astronaut in. So he might have lost his chance to go to space. Right, so far away, Brad, we've got a couple of minutes now, and you're a big fan of like space travel like myself, yeah? So is anything like, from the history of space travel, or any like, quirks of space travel that you're familiar with that you want to talk about now?
Well, there's one I found out recently, actually. This isn't human space travel. This is, so due to the way that time dilation works, based on the effect of gravity, I think, I'm not an expert, so this might not, like, come across properly, but satellites have their own inbuilt clocks, so they have to gradually adjust, because the time in space is slightly different to the time on Earth.
Yeah, because it's like just ever so slightly slower because of how quick they're moving, isn't it?
Yeah. So I found that fascinating, that somebody has to manually calculate the difference between how fast a clock works wherever the satellites are being tracked, and then how fast they work on the actual satellites.
Yeah, and there's all sorts of like crazy things like that. Like they just have to figure out. So even the most basic of biological functions that we take for granted, like going to the toilet, is something that caused some NASA engineer 50 years ago a massive headache.
Yeah.
Like just figuring out stuff like, oh, I want to eat, and it's like, okay, so we need to get your nutrients. Like that's why they send like missions that were like trying to figure out how to grow plants in space, because even stuff like, well, how are fucking roots going to grow in zero gravity? We don't know. We have to go there. And the only way to test it is to check. You have to go to space, plant the seed, and see what happens.
It's like sleeping in space is another one that it took them a long time to figure out.
Yeah, because they're just like, well, how comfortable is it going to be? Or even like, I think the one that like, most people watch this channel probably interested in is like, how do you make love in space? And there is actually a harness that has been patented for two people to be able to like stick themselves together. Because just think, there's no gravity, so there's no resistance. Like, how are you going to do it? How are you going to bump uglies in space? Also, a lot of fluids kicking around.
I guess that might be useful for a mission at some point if they were to send like an ark or something to deep space, but at the moment it just seems like, of all the things that you don't need to do in space.
It's for that reason that they don't send up couples. And there's that story that goes around every now and again of two astronauts who fell in love during the space program and then got married in secret. So the first married couple in space, because they don't send couples up for that reason, because they don't want to fucking in space, because it's going to be a huge issue, because it might cause a big problem. Like, the Simpsons episode where Homer goes to space, and he opens up the bag of chips, he's like, careful, they're ruffled. Imagine that, but it's something else.
Oh no.
Exactly, it's like, careful, no.
It's like when you watch those videos of the astronauts messing around with water in zero gravity, just those spherical droplets of just fluids.
It looks so fun. I playing in zero gravity looks so fun.
It really does.
Like when you see them, like all the crazy bullshit they do, just like you said, playing with water. Like, I bet everything is more fun in space. Like, you would never get bored.
I'm trying to think of something that wouldn't be more fun in space. Snooker would be fun in space. Three-dimensional snooker.
You have like also, you can imagine trick shots you could pull off.
Oh, because you could do it in a big cube, and then there could be holes in every corner. Oh, three-dimensional snooker needs to be a thing now.
It'd be incredible. It's like, did you ever hear about that time where like NASA astronauts were just like, you know what, fuck this, and went on strike in space.
Do you go on strike in space?
They went on strike, yeah, because basically the workload they had, like, okay, you need to do this experiment, this experiment, this experiment. And then they just went, it's too much. It's too much. You know, I know we're only up here for like a couple of days, but fuck you, we're taking the day off. So they went on strike in space and just like, because at that point as well, what the fuck are you going to do about it? What are you actually going to do? So you're going to get in trouble. Why? What are you going to do? You're going to come up here and tell us off? No, fuck you.
I mean, they could just say we're not bringing you home.
So they just took the day off and just spent the entire day staring out the window. Just looking at Earth go past. Because they realise, like, we're not even able to appreciate the majesty of the beauty of the stuff that's up here. Yeah. We're too busy, like, putting, like, tiny screws into, like, test tubes and shit. I love that. So what are you going to do, fire us? How do you fire an astronaut in space?
Fire them out into space.
It's like, I recently watched, like, The Martian.
I love that. I love that film.
Yeah, they had the bit in it where they're talking about, okay, we're going to go rescue Matt Damon. And they say, you know, if we go do this, it'll be a court-martial, we can get in trouble. And I just remember thinking to myself, who the fuck is going to court-martial them for what they're about to do? It's like, can you imagine, like, you've done something, like, you've literally made history, you've rescued a man from Mars, and you bring him back. And I imagine being, like, the fact that they even think they'd get in trouble for doing it, it's like, yeah, you're going to, like, you know, get fucking... some guy's going to ream you out in an office somewhere, but they're never going to publicly chastise you for doing that, and I don't understand how it's an issue.
Well, yeah, because there's three outcomes, right? There's rescue Matt Damon, everything's fine. There's fail to rescue Matt Damon, and then there's die on the way. So, I mean,
it just made no, like, I get it, like, it'd be a worry initially, but the fact that they think they'd get in trouble when they get back, it's like, everyone's going to be so happy that you did it, that they're going to, like, put, like, you know, sweep it under the rug. It's fine, because they're going to want to take credit for it.
And for the rest of you guys, I guarantee they will never send you back up here again.
Good. So, if we go for it.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, we planned this mission. It was all
that thing when they're talking about, like, oh man, we'll get in trouble. It's like, it doesn't matter if you get in trouble. What are they going to do? You're in space. They can't get you. Why are you bothered? And if once you get back, who gives a shit? You're a hero. They're not going to arrest a hero. Like, they're not going to get, you have ticker tape parades and all that bollocks. They're not going to send anyone after you.
Can we just acknowledge as well, has anybody in the history of cinema been rescued more than Matt Damon?
I don't know. I love that one. Just how much, have you seen that thing when they worked out how much money's been spent rescuing Matt Damon from various adventures?
Just always needs rescuing.
The thing is though, like Joe Dunley rescuing Jason Bourne.
No.
Can you imagine if like Jason Bourne got stuck on Mars? Like what would he do?
Just kill the Martians.
Right. So I just remember watching that one though, and it's like when he's talking about, again, like they're talking about the legality of things, where he mentions like, oh, there's like a crashed probe nearby. I'm gonna go ransack it, which is technically piracy. And it's like, and they talk about it like, yeah, it's technically piracy, you could get in trouble. It's like, who the fuck's gonna get in? What does it matter? I know they play it for a joke with the fact he says like, oh, it's technically piracy what I'm about to do. It's like, who gives a fuck? There's no one there. Just steal the shit, do whatever you want.
God, the existential dread of being the only person on Mars and the chance of getting back being slim. Bigger man, I know it's a fictional story, but bigger man than me, like I wouldn't be able to. God, just thinking about it now.
Yeah, now imagine you were trapped on Mars and just like you look down and the only thing you've got is just a series of Elon Musk tweets and you're like, I really wish I'd like Joe made decisions better. Did you see that you say like people like, you're going to send people to Mars? Don't worry, what they can do is, rather than paying for a trip to Mars, they can just work it off when they get there. It's like, so you're just getting Mars slaves. Like, isn't that how Bioshock starts? And he saw no problem with that. It's like, you fucking who the fuck is going to sign up to be every factory you've got has just got like fucking warnings out the wazoo of people like, I hate it here, it sucks ass. And all the things you build explode. Who's going to climb on a fucking Elon Musk rocket to, like, Mars?
I can't believe how quickly Elon Musk went from, like, people saw him as, like, the Iron Man of the real world. And as soon as he got Twitter, it's like, oh, this is who Elon Musk is.
Do you see that he made it so that all of his tweets just appear in everyone's timeline? Because
Yep,
Joe Biden got more
seeing
interactions than he did on a platform he owns.
And then he fired the person who told him that it was nothing to do with the algorithm. It was just that people didn't want to hear from him.
What a fucking loser. Don't go to Mars or Elon Musk. Like, we've all seen Total Recall. It's not going to end well.
Just let him go on his own.
Yeah. Oh man, they should have sent him and Jeff Bezos. Remember when Jeff Bezos went up to space and went, just tell him we're done. Like when he goes on the microphone to ask to come back, say, sorry, we closed.
Elon, I will read every single one of your tweets if they come from Mars. I'm telling you that now.
Yeah, it'll take 6 weeks to get here.